because I want to make sure I'm not gatekeeping in any way, two important people who changed really the entire worldview of a lot of people. These two actually had a ripple effect too. What they did rippled outward, and it had a huge effect on kind of the rightists of the internet. But also it was this kind of thing that altered the way some people, like the moderate Catholic who's sitting there and is like, I've never heard this before. The person who took the college course on Islam and is like, I do kind of remember this being mentioned, but I never understood how important it was. That this is one of the most important things in human history and has caused like massive amounts of war, this one little detail. So two of these people. One is Anne Barnhart, reactionary Catholic, who stopped investing. She closed up her investment business and started just doing, I think, odd jobs. And it had something to do with the fact that she no longer could say to people that when she looked at the numbers she was getting back from just government numbers, just numbers from major financial institutions and stuff, she's like, I'm not getting honest numbers. These can't be honest numbers. This is, somebody's fixing all of this. And that led her, and there was other things in her life that led her to a very, she's very ardent, very hard Catholic. And one of the things that she did is she, years ago, predicted everything that was going to happen with BLM and Antifa. Like, incredible amounts of detail. Because she paralleled it to the Vendée massacre. And at the time she did this, there was her video and one or two other videos. Those videos were in French on the Vendée massacre. I looked about a year or two ago. There's pages in French on the Vendée massacre. So people realized, no, this is what the revolution really was. When the revolution really finally gets to the farmers and says, we freed you all, what happens? What in the long run happens? Minnesota, Minneapolis, Baltimore, Portland, and the Vendée. And she knew. And because of she was right on time, and as things started to go, well, look, I told you the left would start doing this. This is what they really are. This is what the revolution, this is what the liberals, this is what the Enlightenment, this is what it is. It is a bunch of educated people from the cities murdering and raping and terrorizing the farmers and the rural people into obeisance. And so, she called it all. I bet her videos are still up on YouTube right now. Multiple things on the Vendée massacre, and how she was able to easily, and I just loved, she was so far ahead. There was so much too, even imagery that she used, that sure enough, when reality happened, and then people like Colin Flaherty are like, this is the reality. This is it. It's been caught on video. Here's the corresponding news story to what was caught on video. People like this are the people committing the crime. And people like you are too cowardly to say anything about it. And these people at the regional levels of media firms are making sure nobody knows what's happening in this city or this city or this neighborhood or that neighborhood. And then after the riots, the beautiful part about this is now everybody gets to pretend like black people aren't shooting each other. That's now black people they didn't get, like, for a while it was like kind of fun because they would get to like see white people getting the shit kicked out of them on World Star and stuff, but now they're like, oh, but wait a second, now we're killing each other at record levels and nobody knows because the media doesn't tell anybody about violence in blue enclaves. So I guess you're getting three people who are very important, but a lot of what he brought up just buttressed her. She saw it. It must have been like a horrible, like a Damascene nightmare, like an apocalypse. So I usually don't. I learned as time went on to take Muslims that are Muslim that are talking about how great Islam is. Usually, I don't. I go out of my way to be very suspicious of them. It's taken time. But it took me time to learn the import of being suspicious of the Muslim. But there was one in particular that he put some stuff together that was very important, and there's a man named David Livingstone who lives in Canada, and he wrote, what was it? White Soldiers, Black Terror, I believe. But the whole thing is he in particular, The Dying God is a book that he's very well known for, and that was a big part of his critique of Christianity, and really getting into how it seems far more based out of what we would think of as left-hand path occultism. For more on that, you would want to read Lords of the Left-Hand Path. I'm forgetting that author's name at present. It's a very, 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 very good analysis of the occult, like from somebody who really knows his stuff, like he's the real deal. And so he writes historically about what the right and left-hand paths typically are, and how they change in a way. One morphs to the other as it becomes more orthodox in its theology and metaphysics. But David Livingstone did a great bit of work where he started to explain how it was Europeans. This is what has clued me in so much on Iran, the Iranian and French connection. But that there's these Europeans that would get very, very, that were into occultism. And so one of the things is that Islam at that very time people would have been becoming modern. Well, the idea is that there was this secret knowledge, and the secret knowledge was with these guys who were like really, really like strict Muslims, and they wouldn't let you know unless you were like purified or something like that. And there was a variety of these kinds of things. It came out of the various Sufi traditions and stuff, and that the fascination with the Sufis. This is also where we get dervishes from, why we have dervishes, or an interest in them. In the 80s and 90s, there was a big interest by Democrats, the Democratic part of the culture, in dervishes and in music from the Turkic peoples and stuff like that, and belly dancing. It was like, see, Islam is cool. Islam, people don't understand. Those Christians don't understand. And it's like, no, David Livingstone really points out what was courted by elements, these kind of high intellectuals of the early kind of sort of the early intelligence officers, you would say, of the imperial European period. that they courted these people, the Salafists. So Jamal ad-Din al-Afghani, um, and and his Salafi sect. Without knowing that, like, nothing can make sense. Like, nothing in the Middle East makes sense without knowing the kind of loosely, like, how different the Salafis are than other schools of thought. There's a lot about the Islamic world that should not make sense at all. Because if you look at pictures of black people in the 1950s and Muslims in the 1950s, you're going to be like, wait, what is this? Cairo in the 1950s, I'm seeing women's ankles. They're in dresses. They're in heels. Their hair is down. These are people going to office jobs. That you look at Detroit in the 1950s, you're going to see black women in heels, and their hair looks nice, and they're dressed really what would be almost fancy, would almost be Sunday clothes now. And things, the 60s and 70s and the Cultural Revolution, I really have to start looking again at this, is the CIA of the left. It's that elements that were like all the stuff with drugs, all the stuff with experimenting with cultural stuff, the Jackson Pollock thing of just making up Jackson Pollock and his talent, that there was nothing to Jackson Pollock. At modern art, there's almost nothing to it at all. It appears to be something that came out, an industry created by intelligence agencies. And it's just so that people can launder money. That's what most museums are, is so that wealthy people can launder money. Just so a lot of people understand that. Like I've been around that world enough, and then finally, like, I found out what the tax issues were around it and when these things started, and I was like, this suddenly makes perfect sense. I was like, boom. This makes perfect sense. Oh, that's a great hustle. And yeah, but I just want to put that out there because these were some people that the Vendée Massacre video by Anne Barnhart, the work by David Livingstone on the Islam and occultists. Now, a big part of this is then the occultists, educated occulty types of the early 1900s and post World War I, who also were into, like, the ethno end of fascism, that ethno end of Volkish socialism that was happening in Germany, and how important they were. Nobody wants to deal with that because that they would have to, like, really look into theology. How are these people distinctly different? And one of the key things is, this is why, like, everyone wants Hitler to be a Catholic, but it's like, no. Hitler was an occultist, and that he was of a school of thinking that to be a Catholic publicly was perfectly acceptable because he was of a higher level. He's of a higher level than all of us. Because, you see, he's in the secret group that you could practice your religion. That's what the little people do, but you're in the secret, higher level thing. See, this is very important that people who don't understand occultism. This is why somebody like Tarl, Tarl is like kind of like Tarl the Brown, Tarl the Green. Like, he's like this. He deals with herbs. He's an herbalist. He's a rational person. He insists on things being rational, and the spiritual experience is extremely personal. So this is like, Jacob puts his head on the stone and he sees a ladder. That's personal. It's not. He's not telling a bunch of people. That's a very different thing. Proselytizing is a different kind of thing going on. So occultists have to have this very personal kind of experience. This is why Christianity, especially with the Orthodox, is the way it is. They understand the rite is what the group does together to give glory to God. your relationship with God is going to, it must be unique. Because, and they wouldn't even, well, it must be, because you are. You know, of course you're going to, things are going to happen in your life that you could only explain through your religious language and theology, and of course, like, how, you know, and where with Americans we just have we've had about 50 to 60 years of exceedingly bad theological training, and theological language is soy milk now. It's not rich cream. It's not fresh, rich cream. It is soy milk now. So most people, when you're discussing theology and religion, if you know anything about theology and religion, you are usually not speaking to your equals in the United States of America. Even people who are line and verse people, like, there will be things that it's like, okay, well, this is how quite specifically Islam is different. And they're like, well, they believe in one God, and they even think that Jesus one day maybe they will come to. And it's like, no. This is some really kookball. This is a kookball who had a very personal experience with a spirit in a cave. And there's no Psalms. There's no Book of Kings, 1 or 2. There's no Proverbs. There's actually not a single book of the Bible involved in Islam. You know, they loosely refer to biblical stories incorrectly. This is this guy's take on whether you're a good believer or not, and you know, and yeah. So that's yeah. But see, I have my own issues with Islam. But it's important then to understand, like, because Islam, Judaism, and Christianity are different than one another, how they can be exploited so that people will do horrible things and be totalitarians, be totalitarian and malevolent toward others. It becomes unique in each tradition or in each kind of cultural milieu. And so one of the things that people really don't get is that there's certain, like Protestant America, there's a reason why fascism is simply not very popular here, is the Protestants who live here, I mean, have you ever tried there's corralling cats, there's corralling flies, and then there's trying to get a bunch of Protestants to agree on anything. And it's, at least with flies, if you bring honey, you know, or something, they'll like all hang out around it. You know, it's, you never even know if you bring Jesus around if the Protestants will all hang around. You know, and I'm not trying to be mean to Protestants, but some people will be like, what, Jesus? You know, and other people will be like, I don't know. That guy brought Jesus to the party, and you know about that guy. Yeah. We're fine over here doing our thing. And that's another part of the American Protestant thing. We're fine over here doing our thing. God's everywhere. Where'd you get this guy to dress up like Jesus? What'd you think, I'm a sucker? If he was going to come back, he wouldn't show up at your place, buddy. See, there's just all these things I could run through in my mind, like the way Americans are, as opposed to the people of Europe who were, remember, most of World War II and fascism and all that was because these people couldn't conceive of a thing called a state. What the structure of their society was at that time was not structured in a way that you could have a thing that you could call a state. This would have been very difficult to cobble together. These are countries that are centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries old. To cobble out then, this is the border, we are these people, this is our state. That's what it was all about. And I mean, imagine people don't get like the idea of, well, if these people always were taking over each other's regions all the time, what makes one group different than like absolutely not the other? At what point do they say, no, 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 we are here, you are there? For the United States, this wasn't as difficult. And it also, I mean, it just wasn't. The colonies were separate of one another. They were in separate areas. And then those similar cultural groups spread through an area. And then they kind of interacted with one another, and then came independence. And then from there, we've been fighting it out from that point on. We even made an agreement with people who are already here. Here is literally your ethno-state. You have an ethno-state. And what it is that the Supreme Court was like, all right, you made a treaty with these people. And then the Democrats broke that. Just so you guys know, the Democrats broke that. That became a Democratic Party tradition of breaking treaties and making sure, oh, now you're on a reservation. You're kind of an ethno group. Sort of. When we aren't insisting on making sure you don't teach your children your own language. And people who want to say, oh, Republicans, it's like, does it say you can do that in the Constitution? No, it doesn't. So you're probably going to have a hard time finding that as a major Republican platform for a long time. You know, sorry. It's just, that's the way it was a horrible truth I learned about the Democrats. And that these are people who are associated with elite, post-Enlightenment, occultist thinking. And they are. I mean, absolutely, positively. That's what they're associated with. That Republicans are associated with old-time religion. So old-timey that, I mean, that even, I mean, now there is a major, that the Orthodox, the growing Rokor, the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, that because of Alaska and other and people who moved here at certain times in history, and then things changed back at home, so they were here now, and so they started the Russian Church outside of Russia, and so these different kind of bishoprics of orthodoxy and everything. That it's being directly associated with the right wing and far right wing thinking, because of just how they're so much not occultists, and it's like, no, this is the standard. You don't deviate from that into your own kind of interpretation of what the say the scripture or the doctrine or the dogma says, such as, this is what it says in the Constitution. Liberals are, in a way, political occultists. This is also why liberals have to rely on political Gnosticism, that they just know things. They just know that. And I really find once you deviate left of center, you almost always are starting to become politically Gnostic. That there's an absolute, there's a detail, or there's something that would say, oh no, you're definitely wrong, and here's what shows that. And yeah. And so that's why it's like, I like really pointing out how the entire Russiagate hearings, in the long run, when somebody writes the book, the Russiagate hearings were literally almost like a deck of cards of bad guys. Like, it's literally like the Sith are like it's like a lone wolf and cub, like the Kagyu are throwing everybody out, Now you will have a duel with my son, Lord Bezin. Yes, I accept, and then Trump, waxed off and because they deviated from the moral and ethical and legal duties of their offices for whatever occultist shit the Pentagon is up to try to butt-fuck the whole world. And especially the Russian. More and more I'm starting to get this. People need to really get this idea in their mind. There is something about, And this is one of those where I'm just sitting there and going, what? Why do people keep saying this? And like, none of y'all say this to each other though. How is he the black guy? The guy is not even that black. How am I seeing this and none of y'all are like, there's obviously an issue with the Western Euros and the fucking Slavs. There is so obviously some kind of fucking issue. I don't care. It just, the more I learn about like what was the deal with Germany and the Slavs, let me look more. The more I learn about this, the more I'm sitting there going, no, really, there's some you get to a certain worldview of the Western European and even the Anglosphere, and it's like, and they're just kind of like, man, if those Russians weren't there, imagine all those trees, all that gas, all that wheat, all that. I mean, like, I really am sitting there sometimes thinking, like, I think these people really just want to wipe out the Slavs sometimes. Like, yeah. I just can't get over that feeling. There's just stuff that keeps popping up that I'm like, it really is kind of like a lot of Europeans intrinsically hate Slavic people in a way that I don't think I get. I don't think I understand this the same way. But I don't know. I mean, yeah. All right, didn't even make this quick. Later.